Well, welcome back to the channel. It's Dr. Durst, and today I have a special guest with me, and it's Greg McKettrick. And Greg, I'm going to let you introduce. We've been together on a podcast in the past, and we were talking about nitric oxide back then, nitric oxide and better sex. And so today we're going to talk about a few different things, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us what you're getting into these days. And you have a compounding pharmacy background, a pharmacist, and an extensive compounding pharmacy background. And I really want to dive into that, especially with the new FDA regulations or lifting of the black box.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misperceptions around that I would like to clear up. So welcome back, Greg.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. As Dr. Durst said, I am Greg McKettrick. I'm a pharmacist and have been for over 35 years. I come from a strong compounding background, so very familiar with the ins and outs and rules and guidelines. I currently am with Revelation Pharma, which is a network of 20 compounding pharmacies all over the country. I don't actually work in the pharmacies these days. I run Men's Health, so I'm a clinical liaison. I educate our staff, I educate patients, and I educate our physicians, do in-services and seminars, speak at a lot of conferences, those sorts of things. I'm also a medical advisor for the BHRT Training Academy, which that's bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And what we do is we work with prescribers, train them in all different aspects, different realms as far as compounding, hormone, sexual medicine, you name it. I am very intimately working with nitric oxide. I have for a very long time, still on the advisory board with Berkeley Life, but I also work with Approved Medical Solutions. I also am now adjunct faculty with the Peptide University, which is a wonderful thing. It helps me to understand better and help to educate patients as far as the use, application, and introduction of peptides into practices, especially for clinicians. So yeah, lots of different things going on.
Lots of different things. I love it.
Pretty busy, which is how I like it.
Yes. Well, we'll dive into a few different things. There's a multitude and probably endless amounts of things you can speak about. And what I always like to give people, because I was a pharmacist in a prior life, like we talked about this off camera. Yes, it still makes you a pharmacist with a great solid background, but I haven't been a practicing pharmacy in a while, but I'm a huge fan and I dislike the misinformation around compounding pharmacies. So I definitely wanted to clear that up because I'm a huge fan in being able to customize. And, these are safe avenues for, customized products for patients. So I want to talk about that. And then we'll get into some, men's sexual health as well. But given my background and my interest and my desire to support the pharmacy and the compounding pharmacies. And we've been using them for almost a decade, both in a practice and even like kind of before the practice, even for some of the traditional uses. And we have a great local one that, again, is a source. So what you say when you're like an adjunct faculty, like the pharmacist is a huge resource for physicians because physicians get like a month, like mixed in with other things. And they don't even know what BID means, at the end of the day. And so physicians need pharmacists to really support them in their education of pharmaceutical agents and use and practice. So let's get into it a little bit. Compounding, tell me a little bit, again, the FDA, and you hear frequently on social media, these aren't conventional products and they're not FDA approved.
Right.
But what they don't know is all the regulations that go behind that product. So tell us about it.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of, I call it a smoke show, and a lot of it comes from big pharma, to be perfectly honest, because they don't like compounding pharmacy. That's a challenge to their whole platform. What compounding pharmacy offers, number one, is the specialization and flexibility to address individual patient needs. So when there are commercial products that just don't fit, or a patient needs a different delivery route, different route of absorption, dosage strengths or combinations that just aren't available, or We work with a lot of patients who have sensitivities, allergies. They can't take particular things. We do a lot of work. Have you ever heard of alpha gal, which is the animal protein sensitivity from the tick bite? They call it tick bite disease, but those patients can't have any animal protein. So imagine if you are a patient who has 5 or 6 prescriptions and they're all commercial products. And now you have to go back and try and figure out if any of these is going to be harmful because it contains anything, any kind of a protein,
Mhm.
gelatin, coating, fillers that may be animal derived. So, there's a lot of things that go with this. Now, common miscommunication you hear about compounding pharmacy is that
Mhm.
the compounds, and this is the true statement, compounds are not FDA approved. Well, that sounds negative, but in
Mhm.
essence, if you think about it, what is FDA approved? Well, commercial products, products that have gone through and they've gone through market, they've gone through all the trials and testing from big pharma,
Mhm.
and those are the FDA approved products. And I think a lot of times industry likes to spin that conversation and kind of put a shadow on compounding pharmacies because of that. But in reality, if you think what I defined as what the purpose of compounding pharmacy is, which means finding solutions, special circumstances, special doses, whatever the case might be, there's no way that you could possibly go through and have FDA approval on all of these uh, really granular, different topics and concepts with the compounding. So the pharmacy is FDA regulated. The
Mhm.
pharmacy is subject to the boards of pharmacy, and they go through inspections and they are held to very, very, very close standards. A lot of very negative talk came out from a couple of the big pharma companies who I just won't name because I don't like to give them time on the air, but
Mhm.
especially with the GLPs. And obviously that happened because that was a huge dollar gain.
Mhm.
So when compounding pharmacies were providing the compounded versions of the GLP-1s, the semaglutide and tirzepatide, that received so much backlash. And you heard stories about this being, made up in the sink in the back room or in the bathtub, or there was a vat, there was a witch's cauldron in the garage, all this crazy stuff. And, unsafe, not the same product, uses different forms. And we went through a lot of this, and I was involved in a lot of different phone calls and on a couple of FDA discovery calls where we basically had to go back and provide exactly, here's the API, here's the formulation, here's how this is compounded. Oh, look, it's the same damn thing that Big Pharma is providing you. So there was a lot of misinformation that came out because of that. And it did give kind of a black eye to compounding. But, one of the nice things that has just recently happened, we've known for a long time that there's been some very negative press about hormone replacement therapy. And, oh, well, you can't use compounded versions of this because there's a cancer risk and there's this. Well, the thing of it is, a lot of those studies were bad studies. I mean, it's the same bad science that was applied back in the 50s when they were linking testosterone to prostate cancer. Now, those studies were debunked. They were proven to be not only bad studies, but the information was bad. But
Mhm.
it got into every textbook, every medical school, urology textbook, you name it, for 50 years.
In the news,
Yeah, and
all
it's
over the news.
really hard. It's hard to unravel that.
Mhm.
And it's been basically, and it's an indoctrination. You're in
Yeah.
school and you learn this. It's really hard to reverse that kind of thinking. And the same thing happened with the hormone replacement therapy, where, there was a lot of statements made about cancer risk and adverse effects and
Mhm.
is a bioidentical hormone versus a commercial product. Now, just very recently, if you've watched the news or any of the announcements that have come out in the last week or so, now they've actually pulled the black box warning because now they're admitting, hey, guess what? This was bad science. They're talking about how, the studies that they were linked to related to actually forms of some of these drugs that aren't even used anymore. They're talking
Mhm.
about like the medroxyprogesterones and different.
Mhm.
It does. I won't say it's a backhanded apology, but it basically pulled the veil back and they're like, okay, so all that we said before, just don't worry about it. Now they're never going to come out and make a huge statement about, an advocacy for compounding, because again, big pharma doesn't like that, so it doesn't happen. But the fact of the matter is, compounding pharmacies are held to very rigorous standards.
Mm-hmm.
Pharmacists themselves have to go through certification, special training. You can't, even if you are a practicing pharmacist, you can't just decide you're going to compound. You have to be certified. You have to go through training. You have to have the actual facility. And this is where it even gets tighter, because the labs that we work in, these are held to all of the latest FDA and USP standards. So you have specialized compounding equipment and scales and all of the gowning and personal protection equipment. And then you have to have a sterile room, which is, extremely expensive to run, and then a hazardous room for doing hormones. So, if people actually went and walked into one of my pharmacies, they would think they're walking into some chemistry lab because of just the equipment and people being gowned up in the whole procedures. And I think that would do a lot to change the perception. But in general, I think we're moving in the right direction.
Well, I think we are making progress, for sure, that they've lifted, the black box warning. But obviously, for those of us that have been doing hormone replacement for a long time, we haven't paid attention to the black box warning because we've done the research for it, right? And haven't sat in fear, because that's been 20 years. So we're making progress, but it's greater than 20 years out, right? The
Exactly.
World Health Initiative went down in 2002 and it's 2025.
Yep.
And we're just removing it. But compounding pharmacies, you're right, are a workaround a lot of times with that. So what I'm hearing is, to recap for everyone, that number one, compounding pharmacies can customize. So it's not just a 1 capsule milligram strength, or not just a capsule with those given dyes per manufacturer, that you can customize strength, delivery, and even what's in it.
Yep.
To customize and customize that treatment for a patient. But they also are, when you're comparing a compounded product, you're really comparing that to a conventional product, not necessarily this hormone thing that was lifted versus the bioidentical or the compounding pharmacy. Both of them can be bioidentical. There's progesterone on the market that's conventional, and there's progesterone that's compounded. But compounding pharmacies are just providing options that are more customized, but they're highly regulated, FDA, USP, and state regulated. And I would point out what you said very nicely, is that, to me, as a pharmacist with a pharmacy background, in school, we learn how to compound, and you have the mortar and pestle, and you're, grinding everything down and weighing. And when I worked retail, I didn't do any of that.
Right.
I worked at Walgreens, Rite Aid when I was in college, and I wasn't doing any of that. I was just counting pills. I'm not compounding. So my compounding pharmacists are my source because they're super bright. I mean, they're actually weighing and putting together capsules and different deliveries, and it's an extremely difficult thing to do compared to retail pharmacy or conventional pharmacy.
Well, and the thing to keep in mind when you're talking about putting these things together, I don't want anybody to have the impression that, it's just kind of a random, I'm going to take a milligram of this, take a milligram. No, these have actual formulas that have to be put together based on compatibility, based on potency, capsule density, or the volume in any particular, if it's a sublingual dosage form, a topical dosage form, a vaginal dosage form, what is the best vehicle or base to put a topical or a vaginal product in, or something dermatological for the face. So there's a lot that goes into this that is so much deeper, but 100% it is the ability to really fine tune and really, really hone in on what is going to be functional, what's going to work for an individual. And that's where that big difference is, because from commercial standpoint, there's so many different commercial products, but you're still a lot of times operating in almost, a one size fits all type of a situation where we're going to give Premarin, where in effect, from a compounding side, instead of giving, pregnant mirror urine derived compounds, you can use bioidenticals. You can mix them to specific ratios that really match what the body composite is, what our natural body needs. And you can look at this from, when we talk about with BHRT, we talk about the hormone cascade. And this is something I guarantee you that you're never going to see anything like this going to a retail pharmacy and majority of even your prescribers, because we look at doing an evaluation based off of, starting with thyroid and insulin through pregnenolone and then working our way down. And if we're doing an evaluation on a woman for BHRT, the data that we collect prior to doing any kind of a workup, we're going back, when was the first menses? How long were you on birth control? Any pregnancies, miscarriages? When was your last menses? You go through this whole cycle because you have to have this big picture. This all feeds into that patient, and that really helps you to determine what the needs are and how you best approach it.
Yeah, lots of data points. And yes, you are correct. Like, it's not anybody just putting stuff together. These are USP standards that are like in manufacturing, standards that are strict. Well, and you can have a regulation or you can have an inspection at any time on a state level, in addition to a federal level, with strict standards and training. So you're right. I mean, it's good to point that out.
You worked retail pharmacy as I did for a long time. I worked retail pharmacy for 20 years. And, back in the good old day, before all the USP guidelines came into place and all the governances came into place, how often did you mix up a antifungal cream? And maybe you had an ointment tablet. Maybe you just alcoholed the counter. Maybe you had some paper.
Are you going to date us?
I'm dating.
You're going to date us way back there. But yes, no, there were reasons to use the mortar and pestle that I'm talking about. Yes, because you would have to put cream into an ointment. But yes, some of them didn't go in as well as others. And yes.
And we basically kind of shot from the hip. We did what was in the best interest, what the prescriber was telling us, but we really didn't have these set formulas that were very specific so that, the product would have good consistency. It would be mixed properly. It would absorb correctly, and it would actually be appropriate in terms of, the route of administration, how it was being applied. So, there was a lot that we did, and it wasn't that we were being bad or negligent. It's just that things have changed. They have progressed to a point now where the safety of this, the efficacy of this, and the ability to really fine tune what we're doing, it's graduate level stuff. This is just so much different now and so much more complicated. And, there's a lot of negatives that are involved because the cost of doing it. I mentioned, a clean room. Well, to have a sterile room, it might cost $200,000 to implement that in a pharmacy. And then you need a hazardous room, and then you need special PPE and gowning, and then you need special hoods and scales, and it all has to be computerized because you have to capture down to the third decimal the weights that you're using. This is how specific this is. So, when you think about it, the venture of going into this business it's really a huge commitment.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and having this discussion with me. It was super helpful. And we will be in touch for sure. I want to look at your compounding pharmacy and everything that you're doing. And then we will plan another podcast. Okay, Greg?
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Greg.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.